Credit ratings agency Moody's downgrades over a dozen of the world's biggest banks. Affected institutions include Goldman Sachs, Barclays, Citigroup, HSBC and Deutsche Bank. Moody's reviews are part of its reassessment of the health of the global banking industry. The move can sharply raise the funding costs of the affected institutions. The downgrades will now increase scrutiny from markets. Major ratings agencies have rushed to downgrade banks across Europe in recent months amid intensifying Eurozone problems. To discuss that a bit further, we're joined by Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley, who is an author and historian who's joining us now via satellite from Washington. Dr. Tarpley, many economists argue that the global economic crises aren't a result of politics and resulting policies. In truth, how intertwined are the two, especially in the present context?
The current world economic depression is a direct consequence of the decision of the United States and other countries in 1999 and 2000 to legalize and deregulate derivatives. Derivatives are those exotic instruments, toxic instruments that we've heard so much about, sadly, over the last few years. From 1936 until 1982, derivatives were illegal in the United States, but they were then not just legalized over a period of years, but then deregulated by the Clinton administration. And it's those derivatives that have taken the subprime lending crisis and other small events and magnified them to the point where we get the huge debt ratios that we see today. Now, the banks that are on this list from Moody's are all notorious zombie banks. These banks have been saved by the United States government, by the Federal Reserve, from certain bankruptcy and doom back in 2008, 2009. And it goes also for the banks on the European side. These banks are all really bankrupt. If we used any standard other than too big to fail, they would all be shut down. And the reason they're bankrupt is that they're choked with derivatives, in particular collateralized debt obligations, which have destroyed many banks in Wall Street, and then the credit default swaps, which were the key to AIG and some other famous bankruptcies. Just one recent window was the so-called London whale of J.P. Morgan. It was a huge speculative trade using synthetic credit derivatives. In other words, an index based on credit default swaps. And that has cost J.P. Morgan billions and billions of dollars. So it's clear that they're going to be on the list, but all these other banks have something similar. And I think you've named them, right? Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, all went down 2 degrees, 2 notches. It was expected that Morgan Stanley would go down 3. And it was also expected that Wells Fargo would be on the list. They escaped. On the European side, we have Deutsche Bank, Paribas, and Credit Suisse, along with some others. A lot of these European banks are up to their necks either in Greece or Spain or Portugal. So it's really just an open secret that these are zombie institutions and technically insolvent, every one of them.
Dr. Tarpley, I wanted to try out a specific aspect of the economy, if I may. It's been said that war is good for the bottom line, yet the Western world seems to be proving that wrong. What's gone wrong for the Western experiment in war and improving their economies?
Well, obviously, the wars waged, especially by the United States, are absolutely ruinous for the federal budget and for the resources of society as a whole. But in order to get a crisis of this magnitude, you need more than that. And I think it involves really 2 sides. One is deindustrialization, that you wreck your existing industrial base, export all your factories, fire all your workers. Here in the United States, we've probably got 30 million unemployed today in real terms. In Europe, it's 40 million plus, of whom 10 million in Germany, a very sick economy in spite of what you hear. So that's the one side, the deindustrialization. The other side is the financialization, speculation, once again typified by these derivatives, which really ought to be outlawed. And I want to mention in that context a very courageous Italian judge, Michele Ruggiero of Trani, southern Italy, a couple of weeks ago brought in a request for criminal indictments against Standard & Poor's. And he named 5 officials of Standard & Poor's, including the president of it, Sharma, who was operating here from the United States at the time. And the charge is market manipulation by deliberately circulating false information about Italian government bonds with the goal of destabilizing Italy. In other words, waging economic warfare. Because these credit rating agencies, of course, are very much subjected to the influence of the secret intelligence agencies and the establishments politically of the countries that they serve, mainly the United States and Great Britain.
All right, so we'll have to leave it there for now. That was Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley, author and historian, speaking to us live from Washington. Dr. Tarpley, as always, we appreciate your insight here on Press TV.